Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking at the future of semiconductors, and we're going beyond just the headlines and really diving deep with the latest issue of McKinsey on semiconductors. And get this: by 2030, the market is projected to hit $1 trillion.
Wow.
But the question that we're going to try to unpack today is, can the industry keep pace with this insane growth?
Yeah.
Especially with AI kind of exploding right now.
It's a complex landscape. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
It feels like generative AI is changing everything.
Mm.
I mean, ChatGPT is practically a household name now.
Yeah.
And all these AI applications are driving demand for computational power through the roof. How does that translate to the semiconductor industry?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things is we're not just talking about chips getting smaller and faster. It's a much bigger shift than that.
Yeah, it's like a fundamental change.
It marks the beginning of what we call a new S-curve, a period of massive growth and innovation. You can think back to the PC revolution. That was the first S-curve for semiconductors. Then came smartphones and the internet. Boom, second S-curve. Now generative AI is poised to trigger that third wave.
Okay, so I get the high-level concept of S-curves.
Yeah.
But what does this new wave look like in practical terms?
Well, McKinsey has actually gone through the trouble of modeling this out. They have different demand scenarios that they've looked at. But even their base scenario predicts that by 2030, total generative AI compute demand could reach 25 times 10 to the 30th power FLOPs,
Whoa.
which is mind-boggling. And 70% of that demand will come from consumer applications.
70%, that's huge. So what specifically? Is it just going to be more advanced versions of ChatGPT?
Well, I think we have to think beyond chatbots. Imagine coding apps that practically write code for you. Content creation tools that churn out marketing copy, customer service bots that handle complex inquiries, research applications that design new drug molecules, financial tools that analyze massive data sets to generate reports. The potential applications are just incredibly diverse, spanning almost every industry you can think of.
Wow, so it really will touch every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing to think about how much computing power all that requires, so that must mean we need a lot more chips.
Precisely. But it's not just about quantity. It's also about power and efficiency. The energy consumption of these AI data centers is already staggering.
Yeah, I've heard that they're yeah.
We're talking a single server rack consuming up to 300 kilowatt-hours of power. That's equivalent to the power consumption of 20 homes.
20
It's
ohms.
just for one rack.
That's insane. How are we even going to keep up with that?
Yeah, it's pushing the industry to rethink a lot of its infrastructure. For example, data centers are shifting towards liquid cooling systems to manage this intense energy consumption. And that has ripple effects on the entire semiconductor industry, leading to the development of even more powerful and efficient chips.
So does that mean we're going to need more fabs to meet this demand? Especially for the advanced chips that are being used in AI.
Absolutely. We're talking about chips produced using the most advanced technology nodes, 3 nanometers or less. And to avoid a supply gap, current estimates suggest we might need 3 to 9 new logic fabs by 2030.
3 to 9.
Yeah, that's a big investment.
Yeah, that's a lot. So that's the logic chips covered. But what about memory? I remember from previous deep dives that there's this problem of the memory wall, where essentially no matter how powerful the processors are, if you don't have the memory bandwidth, it can really limit the overall system performance.
Right. The memory wall is a significant challenge. And it's one that McKinsey has explored 2 scenarios to try and understand. DRAM Lite and DRAM Base, to sort of get a sense of what that future memory demand will look like.
It seems like it's pretty hard to predict.
It is. There's a lot of uncertainty there.
Okay, so we know that demand for chips is going to skyrocket. But where will all of these new fabs be built? Are we on the verge of a semiconductor gold rush?
Well, it's interesting because companies are looking beyond the traditional semiconductor hubs, places like Taiwan and Germany. They're casting a wider net. And there are 3 key factors driving this shift: sustainability, supply chain security, and of course, subsidies.
The 3 S's. I like it. But what do those things actually mean for companies deciding where to build these new fabs?
Well, let's start with sustainability. With growing concerns about climate change, companies are under pressure to minimize their carbon footprint. This means seeking locations with access to renewable energy sources, favorable regulatory environments.
So it's not just good for the planet. It's good for
Yeah.
business.
It's becoming good for business, absolutely.
Okay. And then there's supply chain security. I mean, the recent pandemic and all the geopolitical events that have been happening
Mm.
have really exposed the fragility of global supply chains.
Exactly. Companies are seeking to diversify their production and reduce dependence on single-source suppliers. And this is where government subsidies come into play. The US, the European Union, Japan are all vying for a bigger slice of the semiconductor pie, offering billions in subsidies to attract investments in domestic chip production.
Billions.
Mm.
So those are some pretty high stakes. How does that influence, like, location decisions?
Well, McKinsey found that subsidies actually play a bigger role in reducing payback periods for new fabs than location does.
Oh, interesting.
So this is really shaking things up. And locations like Ohio and Indiana in the U.S., which haven't traditionally been considered semiconductor hubs, are now emerging as potential contenders.
So it's not just about finding the cheapest land and labor anymore.
Definitely not. It's a much more complex equation.
And I imagine the impact is going to be felt beyond just the fabs themselves, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. The emergence of new semiconductor ecosystems can create jobs, boost regional economies, and drive innovation in other fields, like the Internet of Things and robotics.
So it's a much bigger picture.
Yeah, much bigger picture.
Okay, but let's be realistic. We can't keep shrinking transistors forever, can we? We're hitting the limits of Moore's law. So what happens then?
That's where advanced chip packaging enters the picture. It's becoming crucial as we approach those physical limits of traditional chip scaling.
Okay, so ELI 5. How does advanced packaging work?
Imagine building a high-rise building instead of a sprawling ranch house. That's essentially what advanced packaging allows us to do, to cram more performance into a smaller space by stacking chips vertically, or connecting them in more innovative ways.
Okay, I'm picturing like a semiconductor skyscraper. So tell me more about like these techniques.
Well, there are different approaches depending on the application. For mobile devices, fan-out wafer-level packaging is popular. It spreads the chips out on a wafer and connects them with tiny wires, leading to thinner and more compact packages.
So it's all about like miniaturization
Yeah.
and efficiency,
Yeah.
especially for like smartphones and stuff.
Especially for smartphones.
What about for like more demanding applications, like the high performance computing that we were talking about earlier?
That's where 2.5D and 3D stacking come in. 2.5D stacking involves placing chips side by side and connecting them with a silicon interposer. It's kind of like a miniature circuit board within the package.
So you're creating like a tiny city of chips
Yeah.
with interposers acting as like the roads and bridges.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then 3D stacking takes it a step further, literally stacking chips on top of each other.
Wow, stacking chips directly on top of each other. That sounds incredibly complex.
It is, but the performance gains are worth it. 3D stacking allows for much higher bandwidth and lower latency, which are essential for those data-intensive applications.
So it's not just about fitting more transistors onto a chip. It's about finding like smarter ways to connect and package them.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
And this evolution in chip design is forcing closer collaboration between the companies that are designing the chips, the fabless companies as they're called, and the manufacturers that actually build them.
So it's bringing different parts of the industry like closer together.
It is.
That's really interesting.
It's reshaping the landscape in a lot of ways.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about another industry that is undergoing a massive transformation thanks to semiconductors, and that is the automotive sector.
Right.
So we're seeing this convergence of trends: autonomous driving, connectivity, electrification, and shared mobility, the so-called ACS trends.
Right. And all of these are dramatically increasing the demand for computing power and connectivity in vehicles. Modern cars are essentially becoming computers on wheels.
It's true. You don't think about it, but yeah, they are. And with the rollout of 5G and edge computing, I mean, we can expect even more complex use cases like autonomous driving and real-time data analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine a future where workloads are seamlessly balanced between a vehicle's onboard systems, edge servers, and the cloud. It creates a whole new landscape for semiconductor companies to develop specialized chips and software solutions.
So what kind of cool applications are we going to see in this like car of the future?
Well, think about smart traffic management systems that optimize traffic flow in real time. Remote vehicle diagnostics that can predict potential issues before they become serious problems. And even personalized in-car entertainment platforms that cater to your every whim.
Wow. So McKinsey estimates that the market for these connected car use cases could reach a staggering $450 to $500 billion by 2030.
Right. But with this increasing connectivity also comes concerns about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
As cars become more connected, they also become more vulnerable to cyber attacks.
That's a scary thought. Someone hacking into your car's system while you're driving down the road.
It's something that we need to take very seriously.
Yeah, what can be done to kind of mitigate those risks?
Well, it requires a multifaceted approach. Secure engineering practices are crucial. During the development phase, we also need robust incident response capabilities in case a breach does occur. And collaboration across the entire automotive value chain is essential.
So it's not just the responsibility of like the semiconductor companies, it's everyone involved in the ecosystem.
Everyone involved in the ecosystem, yes.
Okay. And we're seeing companies like NVIDIA, traditionally known for their graphics processing units, taking a leading role in this space.
They are.
They're now providing comprehensive software solutions for autonomous driving,
That's right.
covering everything from the operating system to perception and planning.
Uh-huh.
So they're not just providing the chips, they're getting involved in the software side of things as well.
Yes, the lines between hardware and software are blurring, leading to a much more complex and dynamic ecosystem.
Speaking of revolutions, let's talk about the electric vehicle revolution.
Mhm.
So the shift towards EVs is creating a surge in demand for silicon carbide, or SiNCeno, a material that's critical for power electronics.
Right. SiCSoC is a game changer for EVs. It offers significant advantages over traditional silicon, making electric vehicles more efficient and more powerful.
Okay, I need like the ELI5 version.
Yeah.
Why is 6i so important for electric cars?
Okay, so think of it this way. 6i is the secret ingredient. That allows electric cars to travel further on a single charge. It enables higher efficiency in power conversion, meaning less energy is wasted as heat, and that translates to longer range and faster charging times.
So 6 is like giving electric cars more juice.
Yeah, it's giving them more juice.
Okay, and the market for this material is expected to grow significantly as well.
Absolutely. McKinsey projects that the 6 market will reach $11 to $14 billion by 2030. That's a compound annual growth rate of 26%.
Wow, that's impressive. What are some of the key trends we're seeing in the 6 market?
Well, one major trend is vertical integration. Companies are realizing the benefits of controlling more of the production process, from the raw materials to the finished devices. And we've seen several acquisitions in this space, like onsemi's acquisition of GT Advanced Technologies, as companies try to secure their SiCRI supply chains.
So it's not just about making the chips anymore, it's about controlling the whole process from start to finish.
Exactly.
Another big shift on the horizon is the transition from 6-inch to 8-inch SiCRI wafers.
Right.
So this is going to bring cost savings and performance improvements.
It is.
But it's not without its challenges.
It's not without its challenges.
No kind of challenges.
Well, producing 8-inch SiCRI wafers requires new manufacturing techniques and equipment. So companies are investing heavily in R&D to overcome these hurdles. Innovative wafering techniques like laser cutting and hydrogen splitting are being explored to improve yield and reduce costs.
So it's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, it is. It's a very exciting area.
Okay. And it's not just the semiconductor companies driving this innovation. Automotive OEMs are also getting more involved in the SiNCSI supply chain.
That's right.
Why is that?
While they're driven by the need for greater control and stability, OEMs are forming partnerships with SiNCSI manufacturers to secure their supply of this critical material. They want to make sure they have a reliable source of SiNCSI to support their EV production plans.
Yeah, because they're betting big on the EV market.
They are.
So it's a strategic move.
It is, and most of these partnerships are non-exclusive, which means that OEMs are hedging their bets and diversifying their supply sources.
Makes sense. Don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. What about China? The Chinese SiNCS market is expected to remain the largest through 2030.
That's correct. And we're seeing a trend of Chinese OEMs increasingly turning to local SiNCSI suppliers.
So geopolitics and supply chain security concerns are playing a role here.
Definitely. Chinese OEMs are looking to reduce their reliance on foreign suppliers, both for economic and strategic reasons.
It's fascinating to see how all these global forces are shaping this industry.
It is.
Now let's turn our attention to a topic that's becoming increasingly important across all industries, and that is sustainability. So the semiconductor industry, with its energy-intensive manufacturing processes, is facing growing pressure to decarbonize.
Absolutely. Sustainability is no longer just a buzzword. It's a core business imperative. And semiconductor companies are being pushed by both regulations and their customers to reduce their environmental impact.
And it's not just about reducing their own emissions, right? It's about addressing emissions across their entire supply chain.
That's right. We're talking about Scope 3 emissions, which include emissions generated by suppliers upstream in the value chain. And these emissions often represent a significant portion of a company's overall carbon footprint, and addressing them is crucial for achieving net zero goals.
But with hundreds of suppliers and thousands of materials involved, I mean, decarbonizing the semiconductor supply chain seems like an incredibly complex task.
It is a significant challenge, but not insurmountable. Semiconductor companies need to adopt a strategic and collaborative approach.
Okay.
And McKinsey's research has identified a key insight. A relatively small group of suppliers typically account for the majority of a fab's Scope 3 emissions.
Oh, so it's like the 80-20 rule.
Exactly.
So it's about identifying those key suppliers, working closely with them to reduce their emissions.
Exactly, by focusing on those major contributors and collaborating to reduce their emissions, companies can make significant progress towards their sustainability goals.
So collaboration seems to be like a recurring theme here.
It is. It's all about partnerships.
Okay.
Semiconductor companies need to build strong partnerships with their suppliers, sharing knowledge, setting targets, and developing joint decarbonization roadmaps. It's about moving beyond a transactional relationship and towards a true partnership.
That makes sense. What are some specific actions that companies can take to facilitate this collaboration and reduce those Scope 3 emissions?
Well, one approach is to switch to suppliers with lower carbon footprints. This might involve evaluating existing suppliers based on their environmental performance, or actively seeking out new suppliers who are already using renewable energy, and implementing sustainable practices.
So it's like voting with your wallet.
It is. It's choosing to do business with companies that align with your sustainability values.
Okay.
Another strategy is to engage with existing suppliers and actively support them on their decarbonization journey. This could involve working together to identify emissions reduction opportunities, setting targets, and implementing concrete actions.
So it's not just about switching suppliers. It's about helping your existing partners become more sustainable.
Absolutely.
Okay.
By working together, companies can share best practices, leverage their collective expertise, and drive innovation in sustainable manufacturing processes.
It's a win-win.
It is.
Okay.
And there are other levers companies can pull to further reduce their Scope 3 emissions. One approach is to implement new procurement policies that incentivize suppliers to decarbonize.
Okay, so how would that work?
This might involve incorporating environmental criteria into supplier selection processes, giving preferential treatment to suppliers with lower carbon footprints, or even tying supplier contracts to specific emissions reduction targets.
So it's about using your purchasing power to encourage that positive change.
It is.
And it's not just about working with suppliers. It's also about optimizing your own operations
Absolutely.
to reduce waste and improve material efficiency.
Exactly.
I can see how that all ties into the Scope 3 emissions, because if you're reducing the amount of material you use, you're indirectly reducing the emissions associated with producing and transporting those materials.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
Simple actions like extending the lifespan of machine parts through predictive maintenance or increasing the number of wafers processed in the same chemical bath can have a significant impact on overall emissions.
So it's about being more mindful of resource consumption
Yeah.
and finding ways to do more with less. What about for wafer production? I understand that that's a major source of Scope 3 emissions.
It is, particularly the conversion of ore to polysilicon. That process is very energy intensive.
Yeah.
One way to decarbonize that process is to work with suppliers who use low-carbon electricity, like renewable energy sources to power their operations.
Okay.
Another strategy is to encourage the adoption of process heat recycling, where waste heat from one part of the manufacturing process is captured and reused in another.
This is like closing the loop.
Exactly. And there's also potential to explore more radical solutions in the future, like using biomass as a sustainable alternative to fossil fuels in that conversion process.
Okay.
So there are many different approaches being considered.
So there are various approaches to tackling those Scope 3 emissions, from working with suppliers to optimizing internal processes
Yeah.
and exploring those innovative new materials. It seems like there's a lot of potential for positive change.
There is. Decarbonizing the semiconductor supply chain is a complex journey, but it's one that the industry must embrace for both ethical and business reasons.
Definitely.
And as we've discussed, there are many paths to progress. It's about finding the right combination of strategies for each company and its specific supply chain.
Now let's turn our attention to another pressing issue facing the semiconductor industry. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but the looming talent shortage. So we're talking about a projected gap of over 100,000 engineers in
Hmm.
both the U.S. and Europe alone.
That's right. And this talent crunch poses a significant threat to the industry's growth ambitions.
Yeah, because we can build all these fabs, but if we don't have the people to staff them,
And it's not just about the number of engineers, it's about finding people with the right skills.
what kind of skills are we talking about?
We need highly skilled workers with expertise in cutting-edge technologies, like AI, machine learning, and advanced chip packaging.
Right. So it's not just about filling factories. It's about attracting those brightest minds to drive innovation in the industry.
It is.
Yeah. And the competition for top talent is fierce. I mean, the semiconductor industry is up against tech giants like Google, Amazon, Meta,
Right.
all vying for the same pool of skilled workers.
They are.
So how do semiconductor companies stand out in such a competitive talent market? How do they attract and retain the best and brightest?
Well, I think they need to understand what motivates today's workforce. It goes beyond just offering competitive salaries and benefits. Today's workers, especially younger generations, are looking for purpose. They're looking for flexibility
Yeah.
and opportunities for growth and development.
So it's about creating like a work environment that is both challenging and fulfilling,
Exactly.
and that aligns with their values.
Absolutely. Semiconductor companies need to clearly articulate their vision for the future and highlight how their work is making a positive impact on the world. They need to offer flexible work arrangements, promote work-life balance, and invest in training and development programs to help employees grow their skills and advance their careers.
So it's about fostering a company culture that attracts and retains top talent.
It's a key part of it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about attracting new talent, it's about holding on to the valuable employees you already have. Employee retention is crucial in such a competitive industry.
It's got to be hard to keep employees engaged and motivated when there's so many other opportunities out there.
It can be. Companies need to make a conscious effort to ensure that their employees feel valued, appreciated, and challenged. They need to create opportunities for growth and advancement within the company, and they need to foster a sense of community and belonging.
So it's about investing in your people
Yes.
and creating an environment where they can thrive. And it's not just the responsibility of the HR department. Leaders within the company need to set the tone and create that culture that prioritizes employee well-being.
It has to come from the top.
I can see how that would make a difference. Employees are more likely to stay with a company that values them and invests in their future.
They are.
Right.
And it's not just about retaining individuals, it's about building a strong and cohesive team. Semiconductor companies need to foster a culture of collaboration, communication, and knowledge sharing among their employees. This helps to create a more productive and innovative work environment.
So creating the right culture is essential for attracting and retaining that top talent.
It is.
Okay, but what about like more concrete actions? What are some specific steps that companies can take to address this talent shortage?
Well, one important step is to rethink traditional career paths. Many companies still have a very hierarchical structure, where advancement is linked to moving up the management ladder.
So if you don't want to be a manager, you're kind of stuck.
Your options are limited. And it's a problem because not everyone is suited for a management role, nor do they all aspire to be managers. Many highly skilled engineers are perfectly content to remain individual contributors, focusing on their technical expertise.
Right, so companies need to create those alternative career paths that recognize and reward that technical excellence.
Exactly. This might involve creating expert tracks, where engineers can advance in their careers without having to take on management responsibilities.
You're giving them a way to grow, but without having to become a manager.
Right.
Another area where companies can make a difference is by empowering their middle managers to become better talent developers.
I feel like middle managers get a lot of flack,
They do.
but they really are so crucial in developing and retaining talent.
They are. But they often get stuck in a no man's land, caught between senior leadership and their direct reports. And they end up bogged down in administrative tasks. This leaves them with little time or resources to focus on developing their teams. So how can companies help their middle managers become more effective talent developers?
Well, first, they can reduce their administrative burden, freeing up more time for them to focus on coaching, mentoring, and providing feedback to their team members. It's about streamlining processes and giving middle managers the support they need to prioritize their people.
Makes sense.
Companies can also provide training and development opportunities specifically for middle managers, helping them develop their coaching skills and learn best practices for talent development.
So by investing in their middle managers, they're indirectly investing in like their whole workforce.
Exactly.
Now, we've talked about empowering existing employees, but what about attracting new talent, especially from underrepresented groups?
That's a crucial aspect of addressing the talent shortage. The semiconductor industry has historically struggled with diversity, and there's a vast pool of untapped talent in groups like women, older workers, minorities, and people with disabilities.
Right, so it's not just the right thing to do, it's good for business.
It's good for business, it brings in new perspectives, new ideas, and expands the talent pool.
So how can companies attract more diverse candidates?
Well, it starts with creating a more inclusive and welcoming work environment. This means fostering a culture of respect, where everyone feels valued and supported, regardless of their background or identity.
So leveling the playing field
Exactly.
and making sure that
Yeah.
everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about words, it's about actions.
It is.
Okay.
Companies can implement specific policies and programs to support diversity and inclusion, such as offering flexible work arrangements, creating mentorship programs, and providing diversity training.
Those are all great initiatives. And like I said, it's not just the right thing to do, it's good for business.
It is.
Studies have shown that diverse teams are more innovative and productive.
They are.
They bring a wider range of perspectives and experiences to the table, which leads to better decision-making and problem-solving.
Right.
So diversity is a competitive advantage.
It is.
Okay.
Companies that embrace diversity and inclusion are better positioned to attract and retain top talent, which ultimately leads to greater success.
Okay, we've talked about rethinking career paths,
Yeah.
empowering middle managers, tapping into underrepresented talent pools. Are there other like innovative strategies that companies can employ to address this talent shortage?
Well, one area with great potential is leveraging technology to enhance recruitment and training processes.
It seems like technology can play a huge role in almost every aspect of this industry.
It can.
Yeah.
Companies can use technology to automate tasks, streamline processes, and reach a wider pool of candidates.
Okay, so like what are some specific examples of how technology can be used to improve like talent acquisition?
Well, companies can leverage online platforms like LinkedIn to connect with potential candidates, post job openings, and build relationships with passive job seekers. It's about expanding your reach beyond traditional recruitment channels.
So meeting potential candidates where they are.
Exactly.
Okay.
And once you've attracted those candidates, companies can use applicant tracking systems to manage the recruitment process.
Okay, what are those?
These systems can help screen resumes, track candidate progress, and ensure that all applicants are treated fairly and equally.
So it makes the process more efficient
It does.
and less prone to like bias and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about using technology for like training and development?
Well, there are a lot of options available. Companies can use online learning platforms to provide employees with access to a vast library of courses, videos, and other training materials. This allows employees to learn at their own pace and focus on the skills that are most relevant to their roles.
So it's a much more like personalized learning experience.
It is.
Okay.
And for more hands-on training, companies are starting to use virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR, to create immersive training simulations.
Whoa, that sounds amazing.
Imagine an engineer being able to practice operating a complex piece of equipment in a virtual environment without any risk of making a mistake in the real world. VR and AR can accelerate learning and build confidence in a safe and controlled setting. Host.
That's a game changer for technical training.
It is
It's clear that technology can play a major role in addressing this talent shortage, both in terms of recruitment and training. But beyond technology, are there other like creative approaches that companies are taking, especially when it comes to attracting younger generations who maybe don't view the semiconductor industry as the most exciting career path?
You've hit on a key challenge. The semiconductor industry is often seen as being behind the scenes, not as glamorous as, say, social media or gaming. So companies need to do a better job of showcasing the exciting and cutting-edge aspects of the industry.
So how can they change that perception and attract younger talent?
Well, one way is to highlight the real-world impact of their work. Semiconductors are the building blocks of modern technology, powering everything from smartphones to self-driving cars. They are essential to our modern way of life. So companies can leverage this to their advantage, showcasing the real-world applications of their work and emphasizing their positive contributions to society.
So it's about connecting the dots between the technology and its impact on people's lives.
Exactly.
Okay.
Another powerful tool is storytelling. Companies can share stories about their employees, their innovations, and the challenges they're overcoming. This humanizes the industry and makes it more relatable and engaging.
Everyone loves a good story.
They do.
Stories have a way of capturing people's attention and making them feel connected to something larger than themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's about showcasing the industry's impact,
Yeah.
using storytelling,
Yeah.
and leveraging technology. Are there other creative approaches that companies are exploring?
Some companies are partnering with universities to create internship programs and offer scholarships to students pursuing STEM degrees. This helps to build a pipeline of future talent and allows companies to connect with potential employees early on.
It's a win-win.
It is.
Okay.
And some companies are going even further and establishing their own training academies to develop the skills they need.
Whoa, so they're taking talent development into their own hand.
They are.
That's interesting.
These academies offer intensive training programs in specific areas like chip design,
Yeah.
manufacturing, or software development. It's a great way to address the skills gap and ensure that companies have a workforce that's prepared to hit the ground running.
It shows a real commitment to investing in the future of the industry.
It does.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up our deep dive into the future of the semiconductor industry. We've explored so much, from the incredible growth driven by AI to the challenges of sustainability and talent and all this fascinating world of advanced chip packaging.
It's an industry full of incredible innovation and complexity.
I have to say, I'm feeling a lot more informed about this industry now.
Me too.
It's amazing to see how much progress has been made and to think about the possibilities that lie ahead. What do you think is the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's this. The semiconductor industry is at a crossroads. The decisions we make today as an industry, as a society, will have a profound impact on the future of technology and innovation.
That's a powerful message. So what can our listeners do?
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The future of technology is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play, whether it's supporting policies that encourage innovation, pursuing a career in STEM, or simply staying informed about these issues. Everyone can make a difference.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of this deep dive. I hope you found it insightful and engaging.
I did. Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure having you as our expert guide. To all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of semiconductors. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring all these forces shaping the semiconductor industry, from the explosive growth driven by AI to the challenges of sustainability and talent. But there's one more fascinating area that I think we need to explore a little bit further, and that's advanced chip packaging.
Right. It's a game changer. It's really the key to unlocking even more performance as we approach the limits of Moore's Law.
Okay, so remind me again, what is Moore's Law?
Moore's Law is the observation that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles roughly every 2 years, leading to those exponential increases in computing power.
Right.
But we're reaching the physical limits of how small we can make those transistors.
Okay, so advanced packaging is how we kind of continue to push those boundaries of computing power, even if we can't shrink transistors much further. Exactly. It's about finding innovative ways to connect and stack chips, essentially creating more complex structures.
So we're not just making chips smaller, we're making them smarter.
That's a great way to put it.
I remember you mentioned different types of advanced packaging techniques. Can you refresh my memory on those?
Sure. One popular approach is fan-out wafer-level packaging. Picture a deck of cards spread out on a table. That's kind of what this technique does. It spreads the chips out on a wafer and connects them with tiny wires. This creates a thinner and more compact package.
So it's like taking a whole deck of cards and making it as thin as a single card.
Pretty much.
That's impressive. What are the advantages of that approach?
Well, it's all about miniaturization and efficiency, which are two crucial factors for mobile devices like smartphones. It allows us to pack more computing power into a smaller space while consuming less energy.
Makes sense. What about for more demanding applications, like the high-performance computing that we talked about?
Right. For those types of applications, 2.5D and 3D stacking are used. 2.5D stacking involves placing chips side by side on an interposer, which is like a silicon bridge that connects them. So you're kind of creating a miniature circuit board within the package itself.
Oh, so it's like building a tiny city of chips, with the interposers acting as the roads and bridges.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then 3D stacking takes things even further by literally stacking chips on top of each other.
Wow, stacking chips on top of each other. That sounds incredibly complex.
It is. But the performance gains are worth it. 3D stacking allows for much higher bandwidth and lower latency, which are essential for those data-intensive applications.
So advanced packaging is not just about fitting more components into a smaller space.
Yeah,
It's about designing smarter architectures that really optimize performance.
absolutely.
Okay.
And it's becoming increasingly important as we try to keep pace with those growing demands for computing power.
Now, this level of complexity must require some serious collaboration.
Right.
I can't imagine like a single company mastering all aspects of advanced packaging.
You're absolutely right. Advanced packaging requires close collaboration between the companies that design the chips, the fabless companies as they're called, the foundries that manufacture them, and the packaging
So
specialists.
it's not just about competition anymore, it's about co-opetition.
It is.
Wow.
Companies are realizing that they need to partner and share expertise to develop these complex solutions. This collaborative approach is essential for pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Well, I think that wraps up our deep dive into the future of the semiconductor industry. We've explored so much, from that incredible growth being driven by AI to the challenges of sustainability and talent. And now, this fascinating world of advanced chip packaging.
It's an industry full of incredible innovation and complexity.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm feeling a lot more informed about this industry now.
You too.
What do you think is like the most important takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's this. The semiconductor industry is at a crossroads. The decisions we make today as an industry, as a society, will have a profound impact on the future of technology and innovation.
That's a powerful message. So what can our listeners do?
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The future of technology is being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play. Whether it's supporting policies that encourage innovation, pursuing a career in STEM, or simply staying informed about these issues, everyone can make a difference.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of this deep dive. I hope you found it insightful and engaging.
I did. Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure having you as our expert guide. To all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of semiconductors. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.